Ring for Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse. Read by Nigel Lambert. Chapter 1. The waiter, who'd slipped out to make a quick telephone call, came back into the coffee room of the Goose and Gherkin wearing the starry-eyed look of a man who's just learned he's backed a long-priced winner. He yearned to share his happiness with someone, and the only possible confidant was the woman at the table near the door, who was having a small gin and tonic and whiling away the time by reading a book of spiritualistic interest. He decided to tell her the good news. "I don't know if you would care to know, madam," he said, in a voice that throbbed with emotion, "but Whistler's mother won the Oaks." The woman looked up, regarding him with large, dark, soulful eyes, as if he'd been something recently assembled from ectoplasm. "The what?" "The Oaks, madam." "And what are the Oaks?" It seemed incredible to the waiter that there should be anyone in England who could ask such a question, but he'd already gathered that the lady was an American lady, and American ladies, he knew, are often ignorant of the fundamental facts of life. He'd once met one who'd wanted to know what a football pool was. "It's an annual horse race, madam, reserved for fillies, by which I mean that it comes off once a year, and the male sex isn't allowed to compete. It's run at Epsom Downs, the day before the Derby, of which you have no doubt heard." "Yes, I have heard of the Derby. It is your big race over here, is it not?" "Yes, madam, what is sometimes termed a classic. The Oaks is run the day before it, though in previous years the day after. By which I mean," said the waiter, hoping he was not being too abstruse, "it used to be run the day following the Derby, but now they've changed it." "And Whistler's mother won this race you call the Oaks?" "Yes, madam, by a couple of lengths. I was on 5 bob." "I see. Well, that's fine, isn't it? Will you bring me another gin and tonic?" "Certainly, madam. Whistler's mother," said the waiter, in a sort of ecstasy. "What a beauty!" He went out. The woman resumed her reading. Quiet descended on the coffee room. In its general essentials, the coffee room at the Goose and Gherkin differed very little from the coffee rooms of all the other inns that nestle by the wayside in England and keep the island race from dying of thirst. It had the usual dim religious light, the customary pictures of the Stag at Bay and the Huguenot's Farewell over the mantelpiece, the same cruets and bottles of sauce, and the traditional ozone-like smell of mixed pickles, gravy soup, boiled potatoes, waiters, and old cheese. What distinguished it on this June afternoon, and gave it a certain something that the others had not got, was the presence in it of the woman the waiter had been addressing. As a general rule, in the coffee rooms of English wayside inns, all the eye is able to feast on is an occasional farmer eating fried eggs, or a couple of commercial travellers telling each other improper stories. But the Goose and Gherkin had drawn this strikingly handsome hand across the sea, and she raised the tone of the place unbelievably. The thing about her that immediately arrested the attention and drew the startled whistle to the lips was the aura of wealth which she exuded. It showed itself in her rings, her hat, her stockings, her shoes, her platinum fur cape, and the Jacques Fath sports costume that clung lovingly to her undulating figure. Here, you would have said to yourself, beholding her, was a woman who had got the stuff in sackfuls, and probably suffered agonies from coupon clipper's thumb. A woman at the mention of whose name the blood-sucking leeches of the Internal Revenue Department were accustomed to raise their filthy hats with a reverent intake of breath. Nor would you have been in error. She was just as rich as she looked. Twice married, and each time to a multimillionaire, she was as nicely fixed financially as any woman could have wished. Hers had been one of those Horatio Alger careers which are so encouraging to girls who hope to get on in the world, showing as they do that you never know what prizes fate may be storing up for you around the corner. Born Rosalinda Banks of the Chillicothe, Ohio Bankses, with no assets beyond a lovely face, a superb figure, and a mild talent for vers libre, she had come to Greenwich Village to seek her fortune, and had found it first crack out of the box. At a studio party in MacDougall Alley, she had met and fascinated Clifton Bessemer, the pulp paper magnate, and in almost no time at all had become his wife. Widowed, owing to Clifton Bessemer trying to drive his car one night through a truck instead of round it, and 2 years later meeting in Paris and marrying the millionaire sportsman and big game hunter A.B. Spotsworth, she was almost immediately widowed again. It was a confusion of ideas between him and one of the lions he was hunting in Kenya that had caused A.B. Spotsworth to make the obituary column. He thought the lion was dead, and the lion thought it wasn't. The result being that when he placed his foot on the animal's neck, preparatory to being photographed by Captain Biggar, the white hunter accompanying the expedition, a rather unpleasant brawl had ensued, and owing to Captain Biggar having to drop the camera and spend several vital moments looking about for his rifle, his bullet, though unerring, had come too late to be of practical assistance. There was nothing to be done but pick up the pieces and transfer the millionaire sportsman's vast fortune to his widow, adding it to the 16 million or so which he'd inherited from Clifton Bessemer. Such then was Mrs. Spotsworth, a woman with a soul and about $42 million in the old oak chest. And to clear up such minor points as may require elucidation, she was on her way to Roaster Abbey, where she was to be the guest of the 9th Earl of Roaster, and had stopped off at the Goose and Gherkin because she wanted to stretch her legs and air her Pekingese dog Pomona. She was reading a book of spiritualistic interest because she'd recently become an enthusiastic devotee of psychical research. She was wearing a Jacques Fath sports costume because she liked Jacques Fath sports costumes. And she was drinking gin and tonic because it was one of those warm evenings when a gin and tonic just hits the spot. The waiter returned with the elixir and went on where he had left off. 33 to 1 the price was, madam. Mrs. Spotsworth raised her lustrous eyes. I beg your pardon? That's what she started at. To whom do you refer? This filly I was speaking of, that's won the Oaks. Oh, back to her, are we? Said Mrs. Spotsworth with a sigh. She'd been reading about some interesting manifestations from the spirit world, and this earthy stuff jarred upon her. The waiter sensed a lack of enthusiasm. It hurt him a little. On this day of days, he would have preferred to have to do only with those in whose veins sporting blood ran. You're not fond of racing, madam? Mrs. Spotsworth considered. Not particularly. My first husband used to be crazy about it, but it always seemed to me so unspiritual. All that stuff about booting them home, and goats and beetles, and fast tracks and mudders, and something he referred to as a boat race. Not at all the sort of thing to develop a person's higher self. I'd bet a grand now and then, just for the fun of it, but that's as far as I would go. It never touched the deeps in me. A grand, madam? $1,000. Cool, said the waiter, awed. That's what I'd call putting your shirt on. Though for me, it'd be not only my shirt, but my stockings and panty girdle as well. Lucky for the bookies you weren't at Epsom today, back in Whistler's mother. He moved off, and Mrs. Spotsworth resumed her book. For perhaps 10 minutes after that, nothing of major importance happened in the coffee room of the Goose and Gherkin, except that the waiter killed a fly with his napkin, and Mrs. Spotsworth finished her gin and tonic. Then the door was flung open by a powerful hand, and a tough, square, chunky, weather-beaten-looking man in the middle 40s strode in. He had keen blue eyes, a very red face, a round head inclined to baldness, and one of those small, bristly moustaches which abound in such profusion in the outposts of empire. Indeed, these sprout in so widespread a way on the upper lips of those who bear the white man's burden that it's a tenable theory that the latter hold some sort of patent rights. One recalls the nostalgic words of the poet Kipling when he sang, "Put me somewhere east of Suez, where the best is like the worst, where there ain't no 10 commandments, and a man can raise a small bristly moustache. It was probably this moustache that gave the newcomer the exotic look he had. It made him seem out of place in the coffee-room of an English inn. You felt, eyeing him, that his natural setting was Black Mike's bar in Pango Pango, where he would be the life and soul of the party. Though, of course, most of the time he would be out on safari, getting rough with such fauna as happened to come his way. Here, you would have said, was a man who many a time had looked his rhinoceros in the eye and made it wilt. And again, just as when you were making that penetrating analysis of Mrs. Spotsworth, you would have been perfectly right. This bristly moustached he-man of the wilds was none other than the Captain Bigger, whom we mentioned a moment ago, in connection with the regrettable fracas which had culminated in A.B. Spotsworth going to reside with the Morning Stars. And any of the crowd out along Bubbling Well Road or in the Long Bar at Shanghai could have told you that Bwana Bigger had made more rhinoceri wilt than you could shake a stick at. At the moment, he was thinking less of our dumb chums than of something cool in a tankard. The evening, as we have said, was warm, and he had driven many miles, from Epsom Downs, where he'd started immediately after the conclusion of the race known as the Oaks, to this quiet inn in South Moultonshire. "Beer!" he thundered. And at the sound of his voice, Mrs. Spotsworth dropped her book with a startled cry, her eyes leaping from the parent sockets. And in the circumstances, it was quite understandable that her eyes should have leapt. For her first impression had been that this was one of those interesting manifestations from the spirit world of which you've been reading, enough to make any woman's eyes leap. The whole point about a hunter like Captain Bigger, if you face it squarely, is that he hunts. And, this being so, you expect him to stay put in and around his chosen hunting grounds, meet him in Kenya or Malaya or Borneo or India, and you feel no surprise. "Hello there, Captain Bigger," you say. "How's the sporing?" And he replies that the sporing is top hole. Everything perfectly in order. But when you see him in the coffee-room of an English country inn, thousands of miles from his natural habitat, you may be excused for harbouring a momentary suspicion that this is not the man in the flesh, but rather his wraith or phantasm looking in, as wraiths and phantasms will, to pass the time of day. "Eek!" Mrs. Spotsworth exclaimed, visibly shaken. Since interesting herself in psychical research, she'd often wished to see a ghost. But one likes to pick one's time and place for that sort of thing. One does not want spectres muscling in when one is enjoying a refreshing gin and tonic. To the captain, owing to the dimness of the light in the Goose and Gherkin's coffee-room, Mrs. Spotsworth, until she spoke, had been simply a vague female figure having one for the road. On catching sight of her, he'd automatically twirled his moustache, his invariable practice when he observed anything female in the offing. But he had in no sense drunk her in. Bending his gaze upon her now, he quivered all over like a nervous young hippopotamus, finding itself face to face with its first white hunter. "Well, fry me in butter," he ejaculated. He stood, staring at her. "Mrs. Spotsworth, well, simmer me in prune juice. Last person in the world I'd have dreamed of seeing. I thought you were in America." Mrs. Spotsworth had recovered her poise. "I flew over for a visit a week ago," she said. I see. That explains it. What made it seem odd, finding you here, was that I remember you told me you lived in California, or one of those places." "Yes, I have a home in Pasadena, in Carmel, too, and one in New York, and another in Florida, and another up in Maine." "Making 5 in all?" "6. I was forgetting the one in Oregon." 6? The captain seemed thoughtful. Well," he said, "it's nice to have a roof over your head, of course." "Yes, but one gets tired of places after a while. One yearns for something new. I'm thinking of buying this house I'm on my way to now, Roaster Abbey. I met Lord Roaster's sister in New York on her way back from Jamaica, and she said her brother might be willing to sell. But what are you doing in England, Captain? I couldn't believe my eyes at first.
Oh, I thought I'd take a look at the old country, dear lady. A long time since I had a holiday, and you know the old proverb, all work and no play makes Jack a P-bar-pom-bahoo. Amazing the way things have changed since I was here last. No idle rich, if you know what I mean. Everybody working. Everybody got a job of some kind.
Yes, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Lord Roaster's sister, Lady Carmoyle, tells me her husband, Sir Roderick Carmoyle, is a floor worker at Harridge's, and he's a 10th baronet or something.
Amazing, what? Tubby Frobisher and the Subadar won't believe me when I tell them.
Who?
A couple of pals of mine out in Kuala Lumpur. They'll be astounded. But I like it, said the captain stoutly. It's the right spirit, the straight bat.
I beg your pardon?
A cricket term, dear lady. At cricket, you've got to play with a straight bat, or let's face it, you don't play with a straight bat, if you see what I mean.
I suppose so. But do sit down, won't you?
Thanks. If I may, but only for a minute. I'm chasing a foe of the human species.
In Captain Bigger's manner, as he sat down, a shrewd observer would have noted a trace of embarrassment, and might have attributed this to the fact that the last time he and Mrs. Spotsworth had seen each other, he had been sorting out what was left of her husband with a view to shipping it to Nairobi. But it was not the memory of that awkward moment that was causing his diffidence. Its roots lay deeper than that. He loved this woman. He had loved her from the very moment she had come into his life. How well he remembered that moment. The camp among the acacia trees, the boulder-strewn cliff, the boulder-filled stream, old Simba the lion roaring in the distance, old Tembo the elephant doing this and that in the bimbo or tall grass, and A.B. Spotsworth driving up in the car with a vision in jodhpurs at his side.
My wife,
A.B. Spotsworth had said, indicating the combination of Cleopatra and Helen of Troy by whom he was accompanied, and as he replied, "Ah, the Memsahib," and greeted her with a civil "Creu-ti-nai ma-pe," it was as if a powerful electric shock had passed through Captain Bigger. This, he felt, was it. Naturally, being a white man, he had not told his love, but it had burned steadily within him ever since, a strong, silent passion of such a calibre that sometimes, as he sat listening to the hyenas and gazing at the snows of Kilimanjaro, it had brought him within an ace of writing poetry. And here she was again, looking lovelier than ever. It seemed to Captain Bigger that somebody in the vicinity was beating a bass drum, but it was only the thumping of his heart. His last words had left Mrs. Spotsworth fogged. "Chasing a foe of the human species?" she queried.
"A blighter of a bookie, a cad of the lowest order, with a soul as black as his fingernails. I've been after him for hours, and I'd have caught him," said the captain, moodily sipping beer, "if something hadn't gone wrong with my bally car. They're fixing it now at the garage down the road."
"But why were you chasing this bookmaker?" asked Mrs. Spotsworth. It seemed to her a frivolous way for a strong man to be passing his time. Captain Bigger's face darkened. Her question had touched an exposed nerve.
"The low hound did the dirty on me. Seemed straight enough, too. A chap with a walrus moustache and a patch over his left eye. Honest Patch Perkins, he called himself. 'Back your fancy and fear nothing, my noble sportsman,' he said. 'If you don't speculate, you can't accumulate,' he said. 'Walk up, roll, bowl, or pitch. Ladies halfway, and no bad nuts returned,' he said. So I put my double on with him."
"Your double?"
"A double, dear lady, is when you back a horse in one race, and if it wins, put the proceeds on another horse in another race.
Oh, what we call a parlay in America.
Well, you can readily see that if both bounders pull it off, you pouch a princely sum. I've got in with a pretty knowledgeable crowd since I came to London, and they recommended, as a good double for today, Lucy Glitters and Whistler's Mother.
The name struck a chord. The waiter was telling me that Whistler's Mother won.
So did Lucy Glitters in the previous race. I had a fiver on her at 100 to 6, and all to come on Whistler's Mother for the Oaks. She ambled past the winning post at
33 to 1, the waiter was saying. Oh, my goodness, you certainly cleaned up, didn't you? Captain Bigger finished his beer. If it is possible to drink beer like an overwrought soul, he did so.
I certainly ought to have cleaned up,
he said, with a heavy frown.
There was the colossal sum of £3,000, 2 shillings and 6pence owing to me, plus my original fiver, which I'd handed to the fellow's clerk, a chap in a check suit and another walrus moustache. And what happened? This inky-hearted bookie welched on me. He legged it in his car, with me after him. I've been pursuing him, winding and twisting through the country roads for what seems an eternity. And just as I was on the point of grappling with him, my car broke down. But I'll have the scoundrel. I'll catch the louse, and when I do, I propose to scoop out his insides with my bare hands and twist his head off and make him swallow it. After which...
Captain Bigger broke off. It had suddenly come to him that he was monopolizing the conversation. After all, of what interest could these daydreams of his be to this woman?
But let's not talk about me any more,
he said.
Dull subject. How have you been all these years, dear lady? Pretty fit, I hope? You look right in the pink. And how's your husband? Oh, sorry.
Not at all. You mean, have I married again? No, I have not married again, though Clifton and Alexis keep advising me to. They are sweet about it, so broad-minded and considerate.
Clifton? Alexis?
Mr. Bessemer and Mr. Spotsworth, my 2 previous husbands. I get them on the Ouija board from time to time. I suppose, said Mrs. Spotsworth, laughing a little self-consciously, you think it's odd of me to believe in things like the Ouija board?
Odd?
So many of my friends in America call all that sort of thing poppycock. Captain Bigger snorted militantly.
I'd like to be there to talk to them. I'd astonish their weak intellects. No, dear lady, I've seen too many strange things in my time, living as I have done in the shadowlands of mystery, to think anything odd. I have seen barefooted pilgrims treading the path of Azure Mazda over burning coals. I have seen ropes tossed in the air and small boys shinning up them in swarms. I have met fakirs who slept on beds of spikes.
Really?
I assure you. And, think of it, insomnia practically unknown. So, you don't catch me laughing at people because they believe in Ouija boards?
Mrs. Spotsworth gazed at him tenderly. She was thinking how sympathetic and understanding he was. I am intensely interested in psychical research. I am proud to be one of the little band of devoted seekers who are striving to pierce the veil. I am hoping to be vouchsafed some enthralling spiritual manifestation of this Roaster Abbey where I'm going. It is one of the oldest houses in England, they tell me.
Then you ought to flush out a spectre or two,
agreed Captain Bigger.
They collect in gangs in these old English country houses. How about another gin and tonic?
No, I must be getting along. Pomona's in the car, and she hates being left alone.
You couldn't stay and have one more quick one?
I fear not. I must be on my way. I can't tell you how delightful it has been meeting you again, Captain.
Just made my day meeting you, dear lady,
said Captain Bigger, speaking hoarsely, for he was deeply moved. They were out in the open now, and he was able to get a clearer view of her as she stood beside her car, bathed in the sunset glow. How lovely she was, he felt. How wonderful, how... "Come, come, Bigger," he said to himself gruffly. "This won't do, old chap. Play the game, Bigger. Play the game, old boy." "Won't you come and see me when I get back to London, Captain? I shall be at the Savoy." "Charmed, dear lady, charmed," said Captain Bigger. But he did not mean it. For what would be the use? What would it profit him to renew their acquaintance? Just twisting the knife in the wound. That's what he would be doing. Better, far better, to bite the bullet and wash the whole thing out, here and now. A humble hunter, with scarcely a bob to his name, couldn't go mixing with wealthy widows. It was the kind of thing he'd so often heard Tubby Frobisher and the Subadar denouncing in the old Anglo-Malay club at Kuala Lumpur. "Chap's nothing but a bally fortune hunter, old boy," they would say, discussing over the gin pahits some acquaintance who'd made a rich marriage. "Simply a blighted gigolo, old boy, nothing more. Can't do that sort of thing, old chap. What? Not cricket, old boy." And they were right. It couldn't be done. Damn it all, a fella had his code. "Me ni pan kong ba rotfi," about summed it up. Stiffening his upper lip, Captain Bigger went down the road to see how his car was getting on. Chapter 2. Roaster Abbey was about 10 miles from the Goose and Gherkin. It stood, such portions of it as had not fallen down, just beyond South Milton, in the midst of smiling country. Though, if you'd asked William Egerton Bamfield Ossingham Belfry, 9th Earl of Roaster, its proprietor, what the English countryside had to smile about these days, he would have been unable to tell you. Its architecture was 13th century, 15th century, and Tudor. Its dilapidation, 20th century, post-World War II. To reach the Abbey, you turned off the main road and approached by a mile-long drive, thickly encrusted with picturesque weeds, and made your way up stone steps, chipped in spots, to a massive front door which badly needed a lick of paint. And this was what Bill Roaster's sister Monica and her husband Sir Roderick Rory Carmoyle had done at just about the hour when Mrs. Spotsworth and Captain Bigger were starting to pick up the threads at their recent reunion. Monica, usually addressed as Moke, was small and vivacious. Her husband large and stolid. There was something about his aspect and deportment that suggested a more than ordinarily placid buffalo chewing a cud and taking in its surroundings very slowly and methodically, refusing to be hurried. It was thus that, as they stood on the front steps, he took in Roaster Abbey. "Moke," he said at length, having completed his scrutiny, "I'll tell you something which you may or may not see fit to release to the press. This bally place looks mouldier every time I see it." Monica was quick to defend her childhood home. "It might be a lot worse." Rory considered this, chewing his cud for a while in silence. "How?" he asked. "I know it needs doing up, but where's the money to come from? Poor old Bill can't afford to run a castle on a cottage income." "Why doesn't he get a job, like the rest of us?" "You needn't stick on side just because you're in trade, you old counter-jumper." "Everybody's doing it. I mean to say, nowadays the House of Lords is practically empty, except on evenings and bank holidays." "We roasters aren't easy to place. The roaster men have all been lilies of the field. Why, Uncle George didn't even put on his own boots." "Well, whose boots did he put on?" asked Rory, interested. "Ah, that's what we'd all like to know. Of course, Bill's big mistake was letting that American woman get away from him." "What American woman would that be?" "It was just after you and I got married. A Mrs. Bessemer, a widow. He met her in Cannes one summer, fabulously rich, and, according to Bill, unimaginably beautiful. It seemed promising for a time, but it didn't come to anything. I suppose someone cut him out. Of course, he was plain Mr. Belfry then, not my Lord Roaster, which may have made a difference." Rory shook his head.
I wouldn't say that. I was plain Mr. Carmoyle when I met you, and look at the way I snaffled you in the teeth of the pick of the county.
But then, think what you were like in those days. A flick of the finger, a broken heart. And you're not so bad now, either, added Monica fondly. Something of the old magic remains.
True, said Rory placidly. In a dim light, I still cast a spell. But the trouble with Bill is, I imagine, that he lacked drive. The sort of drive you see so much of at Harridge's. The will to win, I suppose you might call it. Napoleon had it. I have it. Bill hasn't. Oh, well, there it is, said Rory philosophically. He resumed his study of Roaster Abbey. You know what this house wants, he proceeded. An atom bomb dropped carefully on the roof of the main banqueting hall.
It would help, wouldn't it?
It would be the making of the old place. Put it right in no time. Still, atom bombs cost money, so I suppose that's out of the question. Yeah, what you ought to do is use your influence with Bill to persuade him to buy a lot of paraffin and some shavings and save the morning papers and lay in plenty of matches and wait until some moonless night and give the joint the works. He'd feel a different man once the old ruin was nicely ablaze.
Monica looked mysterious. I can do better than that. Rory shook his head.
No, arson. It's the only way. You can't beat good old arson. Those fellows down in the East End go in for it a lot. They touch a match to the shop, and it's like a week at the seaside to them.
What would you say if I told you I was hoping to sell the house? Rory stared, amazed. He had a high opinion of his wife's resourcefulness, but he felt that she was attempting the impossible.
Sell it? I don't believe you could give it away. I happen to know Bill offered it for a song to one of those charitable societies as a home for reclaimed juvenile delinquents, and they simply sneered at him. Probably thought it would give the delinquents rheumatism. Very damp house, this.
It is a bit moist.
Water comes through the walls in heaping handfuls. I suppose it's because it's so close to the river. I remember saying to Bill once, "Bill," I said, "I'll tell you something about your home surroundings. In the summer, the river is at the bottom of your garden, and in the winter, your garden is at the bottom of the river." Amused the old boy quite a bit. He thought it clever. Monica regarded her husband with that cold, wifely eye which married men learn to dread.
Very clever, she said frostily. Extremely droll. And I suppose the first thing you'll do is make a crack like that to Mrs. Spotsworth.
Eh? It stole slowly into Rory's mind that a name had been mentioned that was strange to him. Who's Mrs. Spotsworth?
The woman I'm hoping to sell the house to. American. Very rich. I met her when I was passing through New York on my way home. She owns dozens of houses in America, but she's craving to have something old and picturesque in England.
Romantic, eh?
Dripping with romance. Well, when she told me that, we were sitting next to each other at a woman's lunch. I immediately thought of Bill and the Abbey, of course, and started giving her a sales talk. She seemed interested. After all, the Abbey is chock full of historical associations.
And mice.
She was flying to England next day, so I told her when I would be arriving, and we arranged that she would come here and have a look at the place. She should be turning up at any moment.
Does Bill know she's coming?
No. I ought to have sent him a cable, but I forgot. Still, what does it matter? He'll be only too delighted. The important thing is to keep you from putting her off with your mordant witticisms. I often say in my amusing way, Mrs. Spotsworth, that whereas in the summer months the river is at the bottom of the garden, in the winter months, ha, 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 the garden, this is going to slay you, is at the bottom of the river, ho, ho, ho. That would just clinch the sale.
Now, would I be likely to drop a brick like that, old egg?
Extremely likely, old crumpet. The trouble with you is that, though a king among men, you have no tact." Rory smiled. The charge tickled him. "No tact? The boys at Harridge's would laugh if they heard that." "Do remember that it's vital to put this deal through." "I'll bear it in mind. I'm all for giving poor old Bill a leg up. It's a damn shame," said Rory, who often thought rather deeply on these subjects. "Bill starts at the bottom of the ladder as a mere heir to an earldom, and by pluck and perseverance works his way up till he becomes the Earl himself. And no sooner has he settled the coronet on his head and said to himself, 'Now to whoop it up,' than they pull a social revolution out of their hats like a rabbit and snitch practically every penny he's got." "Ah, well," said Rory with a sigh. "I say," he went on, changing the subject, "have you noticed, Moke, old girl, that throughout this little chat of ours, which I for one have thoroughly enjoyed, I have been pressing the bell at frequent intervals, and not a damn thing has happened? What is this joint? The Palace of the Sleeping Beauty? Or do you think the entire strength of the company has been wiped out by some plague or pestilence?" "Good heavens," said Monica. "Bells at Roaster Abbey don't ring. I don't suppose they've worked since Edward VII's days. If Uncle George wished to summon the domestic staff, he just shoved his head back and howled like a prairie wolf." "That would have been, I take it, when he wanted somebody else's boots to put on." "You just open the door and walk in, which is what I'm about to do now. You bring the bags from the car." "Depositing them where?" "In the hall for the moment," said Monica. "You can take them upstairs later." She went in and made her way to that familiar haunt, the living room off the hall, where, in her childhood days, most of the life of Roaster Abbey had centred. Like other English houses of its size, the Abbey had a number of vast state apartments which were never used, a library which was used occasionally, and this living room, the popular meeting place. It was here that, in earlier days, she'd sat and read the Girl's Own paper, and, until the veto had been placed on her activities by her Uncle George, whose sense of smell was acute, had kept white rabbits. A big, comfortable, shabby room with French windows opening into the garden, at the bottom of which, in the summer months, the river ran. As she stood looking about her, sniffing the old familiar smell of tobacco and leather, and experiencing, as always, a nostalgic thrill and a vague wish that it were possible to put the clock back, there came to the French windows a girl in overalls, who, having stared for a moment in astonishment, uttered a delighted squeal. "Moke, darling!" Monica turned. "Jill, my angel!" They flung themselves into each other's arms. Chapter 3. Jill Wyvern was young, very pretty, slightly freckled, and obviously extremely practical and competent. She wore her overalls as if they had been a uniform. Like Monica, she was small, and an admirer of hers from Bloomsbury had once compared her, in an unpublished poem, to a Tanagra statuette. It was not a very apt comparison, for Tanagra statuettes, whatever their merits, are on the static side, and Jill was intensely alert and alive. She moved with a springy step, and in her time had been a flashy outside right on the hockey field. "My precious Moke," she said, "is it really you? I thought you were in Jamaica." "I got back this morning. I picked up Rory in London, and we motored down here. Rory's outside, looking after the bags." "How brown you are!" "That's Montego Bay. I worked on this sunburn for 3 months." "It suits you. But Bill didn't say anything about expecting you. Aren't you appearing rather suddenly?" "Yes, I cut my travels short rather suddenly. My allowance met those New York prices and gave up the ghost with a low moan. Ah, here's my merchant prince." Rory came in, mopping his forehead. "What have you got in those bags of yours, old girl? Lead?" He saw Jill and stopped, gazing at her with wrinkled brow. "Oh, hello," he said uncertainly. You remember Jill Wyvern, Rory?
Of course, yes, Jill Wyvern, to be sure. As you so sensibly observe, Jill Wyvern. You've been telling her about your sunburn?
She noticed it for herself.
It does catch the eye. She says she's that colour all over,
said Rory confidentially to Jill.
Might raise a question or two from an old-fashioned husband, what? Still, I suppose it all makes for variety. So, you're Jill Wyvern, are you? How you grown?
Since when?
Since you started growing. You haven't a notion who I am, have you? I wouldn't say that. I'll help you out. I was at your wedding. You, don't look old enough. I was 15. They gave me the job of keeping the dogs from jumping on the guests. It was pouring, you may remember, and they all had muddy paws. Good God, now I have you placed. So you were that little squirt. I noticed you bobbing about and thought, what a frightful young excrescence you looked.
My husband is noted for the polish of his manners, said Monica. He's often called the modern Chesterfield.
What I was about to add, said Rory with dignity, was that she's come on a lot since those days, showing that we should never despair. But didn't we meet again sometime? Yes, a year or two later, when you stayed here one summer. I was just coming out then, and I expect I looked more of an excrescence than ever.
Monica sighed.
Coming out? Oh, the dear old getting ready for market stage. How it takes one back. Off with the glasses and the teeth braces. On with things that push you in or push you out, whichever you needed.
This was Rory's contribution, and Monica looked at him austerely. What do you know about it?
Oh, I get around in our ladies' foundation department, said Rory.
Jill laughed.
What I remember best are those agonized family conferences about my hockey players' hands. I used to walk about for hours, holding them in the air.
And how did you make out? Has it paid off yet?
Paid off?
Monica lowered her voice confidentially.
A man, dear, did you catch anything worthwhile? I think it's worthwhile. As a matter of fact, you don't know it, but you're moving in rather exalted circles. She whom you see before you is none other than the future Countess of Roaster.
Monica screamed excitedly.
Oh, you don't mean you and Bill are engaged? That's right. Since when? Some weeks ago. I'm delighted. I wouldn't have thought Bill had so much sense. No, agreed Rory in his tactful way. One raises the eyebrows in astonishment. Bill, as I remember it, was always more of a lad for the buxom, voluptuous type. Many a passionate romance have I seen him through with females who looked like a cross between pantomime fairy queens and all-in wrestlers. There was a girl in the Hippodrome chorus.
He broke off these reminiscences, so fraught with interest to her fiancé, in order to say, "Ouch!" Monica had kicked him shrewdly on the ankle.
"Tell me, darling,"
said Monica.
"How did it happen? Suddenly?" "Quite suddenly. He was helping me give a cow a bolus."
Rory blinked.
"A bolus? Medicine. You give it to cows. And before I knew what was happening, he had grabbed my hand and was saying, 'I say, arising from this, will you marry me?'" "How frightfully eloquent. When Rory proposed to me, all he said was, 'Eh? What?'" "And it took me 3 weeks to work up to that," said Rory.
His forehead had become wrinkled again. It was plain that he was puzzling over something.
"This bolus of which you were speaking, I don't quite follow. You were giving it to a cow, you say?" "A sick cow." "Oh, a sick cow. Well, here's the point that's perplexing me. Here's the thing that seems to me to need straightening out. Why were you giving boluses to sick cows?"
It's my job. I'm the local vet."
"What? You don't by any chance mean a veterinary surgeon?"
"That's right. Fully licensed. We're all workers nowadays." Rory nodded sagely.
"Profoundly true," he said. "I'm a son of toil myself."
"Rory's at Harridge's," said Monica.
"Oh, really?" "Floor walker in hosepipe, lawn-mower and bird bath department," said Rory. "But that's merely temporary. There's a strong rumour going the rounds that hints at promotion to the glass, fancy goods and chinaware, and from there to ladies' underclothing is but a step."
"My hero." Monica kissed him lovingly. "I'll bet they'll all be green with jealousy." Rory was shocked at the suggestion.
"Good God, no! They'll rush to shake me by the hand and slap me on the back. Our esprit de corps is wonderful. It's one for all and all for one at Harridge's."
Monica turned back to Jill. "And doesn't your father mind you running about the country giving boluses to cows? Jill's father," she explained to Rory, "is chief constable of the county."
"And very nice, too," said Rory.
"I should have thought he would have objected."
"Oh, no.
We're all working at something, except my brother Eustace. He won a Little Woods pool last winter, and he's gone frightfully upper class. Very high hat with the rest of the family. Moves on a different plane."
"Damn snob," said Rory warmly. "I hate class distinctions."
He was about to speak further, for the subject was one on which he held strong opinions, but at this moment the telephone rang, and he looked round, startled.
"For heaven's sake, don't tell me the old boy has paid his telephone bill!" he cried, astounded.
Monica took up the receiver.
"Hello?"
"Yes, this is Roaster Abbey." "No, Lord Roaster is not in at the moment. This is his sister, Lady Carmoyle." "The number of his car? It's news to me that he's got a car." She turned to Jill. "You don't know the number of Bill's car, do you?"
"No. Why are they asking?"
"Oh, why are you asking?" said Monica into the telephone. She waited for a moment, then hung up. "He's rung off."
"Who was it?"
"He didn't say. Just a voice from the void."
"You don't think Bill's had an accident?" "Good heavens, no," said Rory. "He's much too good a driver. Probably he had to stop somewhere to buy some juice, and they need his number for their books. But it's always disturbing when people don't give their names on the telephone. There was a fellow in ours, second in command in the jams, sauces and potted meats, who was rung up one night by a mystery voice that wouldn't give its name, and to cut a long story short—"
Monica did so. "Save it up for after dinner, my king of raconteurs," she said. "If there is any dinner," she added doubtfully.
"Oh, there'll be dinner all right," said Jill, "and you'll probably find it melt in the mouth. Bill's got a very good cook."
Monica stared.
"A cook? These days? I don't believe it.
"You'll be telling me next he's got a housemaid."
"He has. Name of Ellen."
"Pull yourself together, child. You're talking wildly. Nobody has a housemaid."
"Bill has, and a gardener, and a butler, a wonderful butler called Jeeves.
And he's thinking of getting a boy to clean the knives and boots."
"Good heavens!
It sounds like the home life of the Aga Khan." Monica frowned thoughtfully.
Jeeves?"
she said.
"Why does that name seem to ring a bell?"
Rory supplied illumination.
"Bertie Wooster. He has a man named Jeeves. This is probably a brother or an aunt or something."
"No," said Jill. "It's the same man. Bill has him on lend-lease."
"But how on earth does Bertie get on without him?"
"I believe Mr. Wooster's away somewhere. Anyhow, Jeeves appeared one day and said he was willing to take office, so Bill grabbed him, of course. He's an absolute treasure. Bill says he's an old soul, whatever that means." Monica was still bewildered.
"But how about the financial end? Does he pay this entourage, or just give them a pleasant smile now and then?"
Of course he pays them, lavishly. He flings them purses of gold every Saturday morning.
Where does the money come from?
He earns it.
Don't be silly. Bill hasn't earned a penny since he was paid twopence a time for taking his castor oil. How could he possibly earn it?
He's doing some sort of work for the Agricultural Board.
You don't make a fortune out of that.
Bill seems to. I suppose he's so frightfully good at his job, they pay him more than the others. I don't know what he does, actually. He just goes off in his car. Some kind of inspection, I suppose it is. Checking up on all those questionnaires. He's not very good at figures, so he always takes Jeeves with him.
Well, that's wonderful,
said Monica.
I was afraid he might have started backing horses again. It used to worry me so much in the old days, the way he would dash from racecourse to racecourse in a grey topper that he carried sandwiches in.
Oh, no, it couldn't be anything like that. He promised me faithfully he would never bet on a horse again. Very sensible, said Rory. I don't mind a flutter from time to time, of course. At Harridge's we always run a sweep on big events, 5 bob chances. The brass hats frown on anything larger. Jill moved to the French windows. Well, I mustn't stand here talking, she said. I've got work to do. I came to attend to Bill's Irish Terrier. It's sick of a fever. Give it a bolus. I'm giving it a new American ointment. It's got mange. See you later. Jill went off on her errand of mercy, and Rory turned to Monica. His customary stolidity had vanished. He was keen and alert, like Sherlock Holmes on the trail. Milk?
Hello.
What do you make of it, old girl?
Make of what?
This sudden affluence of Bill's. There's something fishy going on here. If it had just been a matter of a simple butler, one could have understood it. A broker's man in disguise, one would have said. But how about the housemaid, and the cook, and the car, and, by Jove, the fact that he's paid his telephone bill?
I see what you mean. It's odd.
It's more than odd. Consider the facts. The last time I was at Roaster Abbey, Bill was in the normal state of destitution of the upper-class Englishman of today, stealing the cat's milk and nosing about in the gutters for cigar ends. I come here now, and what do I find? Butlers in every nook and cranny, housemaids as far as the eye can reach, cooks jostling each other in the kitchen, Irish terriers everywhere, and a lot of sensational talk going on about boys to clean the knives and boots. It's... What's the word?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. It begins with in.
Influential? Inspirational? Infrared?
Inexplicable. That's what it is. The whole thing is utterly inexplicable. One dismisses all that stuff about jobs with the Agricultural Board as pure eyewash. You don't cut a stupendous dash like this on a salary from the Agricultural Board. Rory paused and ruminated for a moment. I wonder if the old boy's been launching out as a gentleman burglar.
Don't be an idiot.
Well, fellas do, you know.
Raffles.
Do you remember? He was one, and made a dash good thing out of it. Or could it be that he's blackmailing somebody?
Oh, Rory.
Very profitable, I believe. You look around for some wealthy bimbo and nose out his guilty secrets. Then you send him a letter saying that you know all, and tell him to leave 10,000 quid in small notes under the second milestone on the London road. When you've spent that, you tap him for another 10. It all mounts up over a period of time, and would explain these butlers, housemaids and what-not very neatly.
If you would talk less drivel and take more bags upstairs, the world would be a better place.
Rory thought it over and got her meaning.
You want me to take the bags upstairs?
I do.
Right-ho. The Harridge motto is service.
The telephone rang again. Rory went to it.
Hello!
He started violently.
The who? Good God! All right. He's out now, but I'll tell him when I see him."
He hung up. There was a grave look on his face.
"Moke,"
he said,
"perhaps you'll believe me another time, and not scoff and mock when I advance my theories. That was the police."
"The police?
"They want to talk to Bill."
What about?"
They didn't say. Well, dash it, they wouldn't, would they? Official Secrets Acts and all that sort of thing. But they're closing in on him, old girl, closing in on him.
Probably all they want is to get him to present the prizes at the police sports or something."
"I doubt it," said Rory. "Still, hold that thought if it makes you happier. Take the bags upstairs, you were saying? I'll do it instanter. Come along and encourage me with word and gesture."
Chapter 4. For some moments after they had gone, the peace of the summer evening was broken only by the dull, bumping sound of a husband carrying suitcases upstairs. This died away, and once more a drowsy stillness stole over Roaster Abbey. Then, faintly at first, but growing louder, there came from the distance the chugging of a car. It stopped, and there entered through the French window a young man. He tottered in, breathing heavily, like a hart that pants for cooling streams when heated in the chase, and, having produced his cigarette case, lit a cigarette in an overwrought way, as if he had much on his mind. Or what one may loosely call his mind. William, 9th Earl of Roaster, though intensely amiable and beloved by all who knew him, was far from being a mental giant. From his earliest years, his intimates had been aware that, while his heart was unquestionably in the right place, there was a marked shortage of the little grey cells, and it was generally agreed that whoever won the next Nobel Prize, it would not be Bill Roaster. At the Drones Club, of which he had been a member since leaving school, it was estimated that, in the matter of intellect, he ranked somewhere in between Freddie Widgeon and Pongo Twistleton, which is pretty low down on the list. There were some, indeed, who held his IQ to be inferior to that of balmy Fotheringay Phipps. Against this must be set the fact that, like all his family, he was extremely good-looking. Though those who considered him so might have revised their views had they seen him now. For in addition to wearing a very loud check coat, with bulging, voluminous pockets and a crimson tie with blue horseshoes on it, which smote the beholder like a blow, he had a large black patch over his left eye, and on his upper lip a ginger moustache of the outsize or soup strainer type. In the clean-shaven world in which we live today, it is not often that one sees a moustache of this almost tropical luxuriance, and it is not often, it may be added, that one wants to. A black patch and a ginger moustache are grave defects, but that the 9th Earl was not wholly dead to a sense of shame was shown by the convulsive start, like the leap of an adagio dancer, which he gave a moment later when, wandering about the room, he suddenly caught sight of himself in an old-world mirror that hung on the wall. "Good God!" he exclaimed, recoiling. With nervous fingers he removed the patch, thrust it into his pocket, tore the fungoid growth from his lip, and struggled out of the check coat. This done, he went to the window, leaned out, and called in a low, conspiratorial voice, "Jeeves!" There was no answer. "Hi, Jeeves. Where are you?" Again silence. Bill gave a whistle, then another. He was still whistling, his body halfway through the French window, when the door behind him opened, revealing a stately form. The man who entered, or perhaps one should say shimmered into the room, was tall and dark and impressive. He might have been one of the better-class ambassadors, or the youngish high priest of some refined and dignified religion. His eyes gleamed with the light of intelligence, and his finely chiselled face expressed a feudal desire to be of service. His whole air was that of a gentleman's gentleman who, having developed his brain over a course of years by means of a steady fish diet, is eager to place that brain at the disposal of the young master. He was carrying over one arm a coat of sedate colour and a tie of conservative pattern. "You whistled, my lord?" he said. Bill spun round. "How the dickens did you get over there, Jeeves?" "I ran the car into the garage, my lord, and then made my way to the servants' quarters. Your coat, my lord?" "Oh, thanks. I see you've changed." "I deemed it advisable, my lord. The gentleman was not far behind us as we rounded into the straight, and may at any moment be calling. Were he to encounter on the threshold a butler in a check suit and a false moustache, it is possible that his suspicions might be aroused. I am glad to see that your lordship has removed that somewhat distinctive tie. Excellent for creating atmosphere on the racecourse, it is scarcely vogue in private life." Bill eyed the repellent object with a shudder. "I've always hated that beastly thing, Jeeves. All those foul horseshoes. Shove it away somewhere. And the coat." "Very good, my lord. This coffer should prove adequate as a temporary receptacle." Jeeves took the coat and tie and crossed the room to where a fine old oak dower chest stood, an heirloom long in the Roaster family. "Yes," he said, "'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough. 'Twill serve." He folded the distressing objects carefully, placed them inside, and closed the lid. And even this simple act he performed with a quiet dignity which would have impressed any spectator less agitated than Bill Roaster. It was like seeing the plenipotentiary of a great nation lay a wreath on the tomb of a deceased monarch. But Bill, as we say, was agitated. He was brooding over an earlier remark that had fallen from this great man's lips. "What do you mean, the gentleman may at any moment be calling?" he asked. The thought of receiving a visit from that red-faced man with the loud voice who had bellowed abuse at him all the way from Epsom Downs to South Moultonshire was not an unmixedly agreeable one. "It is possible that he observed and memorized the number of our car, my lord. He was in a position to study our license plate for some considerable time, your lordship will recollect." Bill sank limply into a chair and brushed a bead of perspiration from his forehead. This contingency, as Jeeves would have called it, had not occurred to him. Placed before him now, it made him feel filleted. "Oh, golly, I never thought of that. Then he would get the owner's name and come racing along here, wouldn't he?" "So one would be disposed to imagine, my lord." "Hell's bells, Jeeves." "Yes, my lord." Bill applied the handkerchief to his forehead again. "What do I do if he does?" "I would advise your lordship to assume a nonchalant air and disclaim all knowledge of the matter." "With a light laugh, you mean?" "Precisely, my lord." Bill tried a light laugh. "Ha ha ha ha! How did that sound, Jeeves?" "Barely adequate, my lord." "More like a death rattle?" "Yes, my lord." "I shall need a few rehearsals." "Several, my lord. It will be essential to carry conviction." Bill kicked petulantly at a footstool. "How do you expect me to carry conviction, feeling the way I do?" "I can readily appreciate that your lordship is disturbed." "I'm all of a twitter. Have you ever seen a jelly hit by a cyclone?" "No, my lord. I have never been present on such an occasion." "It quivers, and so do I." "After such an ordeal, your lordship would be unstrung." "Ordeal's the right word, Jeeves. Apart from the frightful peril one is in, it was so dashed ignominious having to leg it like that." "I should hardly describe our recent activities as legging it, my lord. Strategic retreat is more the mot juste. This is a recognized military maneuver, practiced by all the greatest tacticians when the occasion seemed to call for such a move. I have no doubt that General Eisenhower has had recourse to it from time to time." "But I don't suppose he had a fermenting punter after him, shouting 'Welsher' at the top of his voice." "Possibly not, my lord." Bill brooded. "It was that word 'Welsher' that hurt Jeeves." "I can readily imagine it, my lord. objected to as irrelevant, incompetent, and immaterial, as I believe the legal expression is. As your lordship several times asseverated during our precarious homeward journey, you have every intention of paying the gentleman.
Of course I have. No argument about that. Naturally I intend to brass up to the last penny. It's a case of... What, Jeeves?
Noblesse oblige, my lord.
Exactly. The honour of the roasters is at stake. But I must have time, dash it, to raise £3,000 2 and 6.
£3,005 2 and 6, my lord. Your lordship is forgetting the gentleman's original £5 note.
So I am. You trousered it and came away with it in your pocket.
Precisely, my lord. Thus bringing the total sum of your obligations to this Captain Bigger.
Was that his name?
Yes, my lord. Captain C.G. Brabazon Bigger, United Rovers Club, Northumberland Avenue, London, WC2. In my capacity as your lordship's clerk, I wrote the name and address on the ticket, which he now has in his possession. The note which he handed to me, and which I duly accepted as your lordship's official representative, raises your commitments to £3,005 2 shillings and 6pence.
Oh, gosh!
Yes, my lord. It is not an insignificant sum. Many a poor man would be glad of £3,005 2 shillings and 6pence.
Bill winced. I would be grateful, Jeeves, if you could see your way not to keep on intoning those words.
Very good, my lord.
They are splashed on my soul in glorious technicolor.
Quite so, my lord.
Who was it who said that when he or she was dead, the word something would be found carved on his or her heart?
Queen Mary, my lord, the predecessor of the great Queen Elizabeth. The word was Calais, and the observation was intended to convey her chagrin at the loss of that town.
Well, when I die, which will be very shortly if I go on feeling as I do now, just cut me open, Jeeves.
Certainly, my lord.
And I'll bet you a couple of bob you'll find carved on my heart the words £3,005 2 and 6.
Bill rose and paced the room with fevered steps.
How does one scrape together a sum like that, Jeeves?
It will call for thrift, my lord.
You bet it will. It'll take years.
And Captain Bigger struck me as an impatient gentleman.
You needn't rub it in, Jeeves.
Very good, my lord.
Let's keep our minds on the present.
Yes, my lord. Remember that man's life lies all within this present, as 'twere but a hair's breadth of time. As for the rest, the past is gone, the future yet unseen.
Eh?
Marcus Aurelius, my lord.
Oh? Well, as I was saying, let us glue our minds on what is going to happen if this Bigger suddenly blows in here. Do you think he'll recognize me?
I am inclined to fancy not, my lord. The moustache and the patch formed a very effective disguise. After all, in the past few months we have encountered several gentlemen of your lordship's acquaintance,
and not one of them spotted me.
No, my lord. Nevertheless, facing the facts, I fear we must regard this afternoon's episode as a setback. It is clearly impossible for us to function at the Derby tomorrow.
I was looking forward to cleaning up on the Derby.
I too, my lord. But after what has occurred, one's entire turf activities must, I fear, be regarded as suspended indefinitely.
You don't think we could risk one more pop?
No, my lord.
I see what you mean, of course. Show up at Epsom tomorrow, and the first person we'd run into would be this Captain Bigger,
straddling like Apollyon right across the way. Precisely, my lord.
Bill passed a hand through his disordered hair. If only I'd frozen onto the money we made at Newmarket.
Yes, my lord. Of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these. It might have been. Whittier.
You warned me not to let our capital fall too low.
I felt that we were not equipped to incur any heavy risk. That was why I urged your lordship so vehemently to lay Captain Bigger's second wager off. I had misgivings. True, the probability of the double bearing fruit at such odds was not great, but when I saw Whistler's mother pass us on her way to the starting post, I was conscious of a tremor of uneasiness. Those long legs, that powerful rump.
Don't, Jeeves.
Very good, my lord.
I'm trying not to think of Whistler's mother.
I quite understand, my lord.
Who the dickens was Whistler, anyway?
A figure, landscape and portrait painter of considerable distinction, my lord. Born in Lowell, Massachusetts in 1834, his Portrait of My Mother, painted in 1872, is particularly esteemed by the cognoscenti and was purchased by the French government for the Luxembourg Gallery, Paris, in 1892. His works are individual in character and notable for subtle colour harmony. Bill breathed a little stertorously.
It's subtle, is it?
Yes, my lord.
I see. Thanks for telling me. I was worrying myself sick about his colour harmony.
Bill became calmer.
Jeeves, if the worst comes to the worst, and Bigger does catch me bending, can I gain a bit of time by pleading the Gaming Act?
I fear not, my lord. You took the gentleman's money, a cash transaction.
It would mean choky, you feel?
I fancy so, my lord.
Would you be jugged too, as my clerk?
In all probability, my lord. I'm not quite certain on the point. I should have to consult my solicitor.
But I would be for it.
Yes, my lord. The sentences, however, are not, I believe, severe.
But think of the papers. The 9th Earl of Rochester, whose ancestors held the field at Agincourt, skipped from the field at Epsom with a slavering punter after him. It'll be jam for the newspaper boys.
Unquestionably, the circumstance of your lordship having gone into business as a silver ring bookmaker would be accorded wide publicity. Bill, who'd been pacing the floor again, stopped in mid-stride and regarded the speaker with an accusing eye.
And who was it suggested that I should go into business as a silver ring bookie? You, Jeeves. I don't want to be harsh, but you must own that the idea came from you. You were the...
Fons et origio male, my lord. That, I admit, is true. But if your lordship will recall, we were in something of a quandary. We had agreed that your lordship's impending marriage made it essential to augment your lordship's slender income, and we went through the classified trades section of the telephone directory in quest of a possible profession which your lordship might adopt. It was merely because nothing of a suitable nature had presented itself by the time we reached the T's that I suggested turf accountant, faute de mieux.
Faute de what?
Mieux, my lord, a French expression. We should say, for want of anything better.
What asses these Frenchmen are! Why can't they talk English?
They are possibly more to be pitied than censured, my lord. Early upbringing, no doubt, has a good deal to do with it. As I was saying, it seemed to me a happy solution of your lordship's difficulties. In the United States of America, I believe, bookmakers are considered persons of a somewhat low order, and are indeed suppressed by the police. But in England, it is very different. Here they are looked up to and courted. There is a school of thought which regards them as the new aristocracy. They make a great deal of money, and have the added gratification of not paying income tax. Bill sighed wistfully.
We made a lot of money, up to Newmarket.
Yes, my lord.
And where is it now?
Where indeed, my lord?
I shouldn't have spent so much doing up the place.
No, my lord.
And it was a mistake to pay my tailor's bill.
Yes, my lord. One feels that your lordship did somewhat overdo it there. As the old Roman observed, ne quid nimis.
Yes, that was rash. Still, no good beefing about it now, I suppose.
No, my lord. The moving finger writes, and having writ,
hoy,
moves on. Nor all your piety and wit can lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all your tears wash out one word of it. You were saying, my lord?
I was only going to ask you to cheese it.
Certainly, my lord.
Not in the mood.
Quite so, my lord. It was only the appositeness of the quotation from the works of the Persian poet Omar Khayyam that led me to speak. I wonder if I might ask a question, my lord.
Yes, Jeeves?
Is Miss Wyvern aware of your lordship's professional connection with the turf?
Bill quivered like an aspen at the mere suggestion. I should say not. She would throw 57 fits if she knew. I've rather given her the idea that I'm employed by the Agricultural Board.
A most respectable body of men.
I didn't actually say so in so many words. I just strewed the place with Agricultural Board report forms and took care she saw them. Did you know that they issue 179 different blanks other than the 17 questionnaires?
No, my lord, I was not aware. It shows zeal.
Great zeal. They're on their toes, those boys.
Yes, my lord.
But we're wandering from the point, which is that Miss Wyvern must never learn the awful truth. It would be fatal. At the outset of our betrothal, she put her foot down firmly on the subject of my tendency to have an occasional flutter, and I promised her faithfully that I would never punt again. Well, you might argue that being a silver ring bookie is not the same thing as punting, but I doubt if you could ever sell that idea to Miss Wyvern.
The distinction is certainly a nice one, my lord.
Let her discover the facts, and all will be lost.
Those wedding bells would not ring out.
They certainly wouldn't. She would return me to store before I could say, what ho. So, if she comes asking questions, reveal nothing. Not even if she sticks lighted matches between your toes.
The contingency is a remote one, my lord.
Possibly. I'm merely saying, whatever happens, Jeeves, secrecy and silence.
You may rely on me, my lord. In the inspired words of Pliny the Younger.
Bill held up a hand. Right-ho, Jeeves?
Very good, my lord.
I'm not interested in Pliny the Younger.
No, my lord.
As far as I'm concerned, you may take Pliny the Younger and put him where the monkey puts the nuts.
Certainly, my lord.
And now leave me, Jeeves. I have a lot of heavy brooding to do. Go and get me a stiffish whiskey and soda.
Very good, my lord. I will attend to the matter immediately.
Jeeves melted from the room with a look of respectful pity, and Bill sat down and put his head between his hands. A hollow groan escaped him, and he liked the sound of it and gave another. He was just starting on a third, bringing it up from the soles of his feet, when a voice spoke at his side. "Good heavens, Bill! What on earth's the matter?" Jill Wyvern was standing there. Chapter 5. In the interval which had elapsed since her departure from the living-room, Jill had rubbed American ointment on Mike the Irish Terrier, taken a look at a goldfish belonging to the cook, which had caused anxiety in the kitchen by refusing its aunt's eggs, and made a routine tour of the pigs and cows, giving one of the latter a bolus. She had returned to the house, agreeably conscious of duty done, and looking forward to a chat with her loved one, who, she presumed, would by now be back from his Agricultural Board rounds, and in a mood for pleasant dalliance. For even when the Agricultural Board know they have got hold of an exceptionally good man, and wish, naturally, to get every possible ounce of work out of him, they are humane enough to let the poor peon call it a day, around the hour of the evening cocktail. To find him groaning, with his head in his hands, was something of a shock. "What on earth's the matter?" she repeated. Bill had sprung from his chair with a convulsive leap. That loved voice, speaking unexpectedly out of the void when he supposed himself to be alone with his grief, had affected him like a buzzsaw applied to the seat of his trousers. If it had been Captain C.G. Brabazon Bigger of the United Rovers Club, Northumberland Avenue, he could not have been much more perturbed. He gaped at her, quivering in every limb. Jeeves, had he been present, would have been reminded of Macbeth seeing the ghost of Banquo. "Matter?" he said, inserting 3 M's at the beginning of the word. Jill was looking at him with grave, speculative eyes.
She had that direct, honest gaze which many nice girls have, and as a rule Bill liked it. But at the moment he could have done with something that did not pierce quite so like a red-hot gimlet to his inmost soul. A sense of guilt makes a man allergic to direct, honest gazes. "Matter?" he said, getting the word shorter and crisper this time. "What do you mean? What's the matter?" "Nothing's the matter. Why do you ask?" "You are groaning like a foghorn." "Oh, that! Touch of neuralgia." "You've got a headache?" "Yes. It's been coming on for some time. I've had rather an exhausting afternoon." "Why, aren't the crops rotating properly? Or are the pigs going in for smaller families?" "My chief problem today," said Bill dully, "concerned horses." A quick look of suspicion came into Jill's gaze. Like all nice girls, she had, where the man she loved was concerned, something of the private eye about her. "Have you been betting again?" Bill stared. "Me?" "You gave me your solemn promise you wouldn't. Oh, Bill, you are an idiot. You're more trouble to look after than a troop of performing seals. Can't you see it's just throwing money away? Can't you get it into your fat head that the punters haven't a hope against the bookmakers? I know people are always talking about bringing off fantastic doubles and winning thousands of pounds with a single fiver, but that sort of thing never really happens. What did you say?" Bill had not spoken. The sound that had proceeded from his twisted lips had been merely a soft moan, like that of an emotional Red Indian at the stake. "It happens sometimes," he said hollowly. "I've heard of cases." "Well, it couldn't happen to you. Horses just aren't lucky for you." Bill writhed. The illusion that he was being roasted over a slow fire had become extraordinarily vivid. "Yes," he said. "I see that now." Jill's gaze became more direct and penetrating than ever. "Come clean, Bill. Did you back a loser in the Oaks?" This was so diametrically opposite to what had actually occurred that Bill perked up a little. "Of course I didn't." "You swear?" "I may begin to at any moment." "You didn't back anything in the Oaks?" "Certainly not." "Then what's the matter?" I told you. I've got a headache." "Poor old thing. Can I get you anything?" No, thanks. Jeeves is bringing me a whiskey and soda."
"Would a kiss help while you're waiting?"
"It would save a human life." Jill kissed him, but absently. She appeared to be thinking.
"Jeeves was with you today, wasn't he?"
she said. Yes, Jeeves was along."
"You always take him with you on these expeditions of yours?"
"Yes."
"Where do you go?"
"We make the rounds."
"Doing what?"
"Oh, this and that."
"I see. How's the headache?"
"A little better, thanks."
"Good."
There was silence for a moment.
"I used to have headaches a few years ago," said Jill.
"Bad?"
"Quite bad. I suffered agonies."
"They do touch you up, don't they?"
"They do. But,"
proceeded Jill, her voice rising and a hard note creeping into her voice,
"my headaches, painful as they were, never made me look like an escaped convict lurking in a bush, listening to the baying of the bloodhounds, and wondering every minute when the hand of doom was going to fall on the seat of his pants. And that's how you are looking now. There's guilt written on your every feature. If you were to tell me at this moment that you had done a murder and were worrying because you had suddenly remembered you hadn't hidden the body properly, I would say, 'I thought as much. Bill, for the last time, what's the matter?'
"Nothing's the matter."
"Don't tell me."
"I'm telling you."
"There's nothing on your mind?"
"Not a thing."
"You're as gay and carefree as a lark singing in the summer sky?"
"If anything, rather more so." There was another silence. Jill was biting her lip, and Bill wished she wouldn't. There was, of course, nothing actually low and degrading in a girl biting her lip, but It is a spectacle that a fiancé with a good deal on his mind can never really enjoy.
Bill, tell me, said Jill, how do you feel about marriage?
Bill brightened. This, he felt, was more the stuff. I think it's an extraordinary good egg. Always, provided, of course, that the male half of the sketch is getting someone like you.
Never mind the pretty speeches. Shall I tell you how I feel about it?
Do.
I feel that unless there is absolute trust between a man and a girl, they're crazy even to think of getting married, because if they're going to hide things from each other and not tell each other their troubles, their marriage is bound to go on the rocks sooner or later. A husband and wife ought to tell each other everything. I wouldn't ever dream of keeping anything from you, and if it interests you to know, I'm as sick as mud to think that you're keeping this trouble of yours, whatever it is, from me.
I'm not in any trouble.
You are. What's happened I don't know, but a short-sighted mole that's lost its spectacles could see that you're a soul in torment. When I came in here, you were groaning your head off.
Bill's self-control, sorely tried today, cracked.
Damn it all,
he bellowed.
Why shouldn't I groan? I believe Roaster Abbey is open for being groaned in at about this hour, is it not? I wish to heaven you would leave me alone, he went on, gathering momentum. Who do you think you are? One of these G-men fellows questioning some rat of the underworld? I suppose you'll be asking next where I was on the night of February the 21st. Don't be such an infernal nosy Parker. Jill was a girl of spirit, and with girls of spirit, this sort of thing soon reaches saturation point.
I don't know if you know it, she said coldly, but when you spit on your hands and get down to it, you can be the world's premier louse.
Well, that's a nice thing to say.
Well, it's the truth, said Jill. You're simply a pig in human shape. And if you want to know what I think, she went on, gathering momentum in her turn, I believe what's happened is that you've gone and got mixed up with some awful female.
You're crazy. Where the dickens could I have met any awful females?
I should imagine you've had endless opportunities. You're always going off in your car, sometimes for a week at a stretch. For all I know, you may have been spending your time festooned with hussies.
I wouldn't so much as look at a hussy if you brought her to me on a plate with watercress round her.
I don't believe you.
And it was you, if memory serves me right, said Bill, who some 2.5 seconds ago was shooting off your head about the necessity for absolute trust between us. Huh, women, said Bill bitterly. Women, my God, what a sex!
On this difficult situation, Jeeves entered bearing a glass on a salver. "Your whiskey and soda, my lord," he said, much as a president of the United States might have said to a deserving citizen, "Take this congressional medal." Bill accepted the restorative gratefully. "Thank you, Jeeves. Not a moment before it was needed." "And Sir Roderick and Lady Carmoyle are in the yew alley asking to see you, my lord."
"Good heavens! Rory and the Moke? Where did they spring from? I thought she was in Jamaica."
"Her ladyship returned this morning, I understand, and Sir Roderick obtained compassionate leave from Harridge's in order to accompany her here. They desired me to inform your lordship that they would be glad of a word with you at your convenience before the arrival of Mrs. Spotsworth."
"Before the what of who? Who on earth's Mrs. Spotsworth?"
"An American lady whose acquaintance her ladyship made in New York, my lord. She is expected here this evening. I gathered from what her ladyship and Sir Roderick were saying that there is some prospect of Mrs. Spotsworth buying the house." Bill gaped.
"Buying the house?"
"Yes, my lord."
"This house?"
"Yes, my lord."
"Roaster Abbey, you mean?"
"Yes, my lord."
"You're pulling my leg, Jeeves."
"I would not take such a liberty, my lord."
"You seriously mean that this refugee from whatever American loony bin it was where she was under observation until she sneaked out with false whiskers on is actually contemplating paying hard cash for Roaster Abbey?"
"That was the interpretation which I placed on the remarks of her ladyship and Sir Roderick, my lord." Bill drew a deep breath.
Well, I'll be blowed. It just shows you that it takes all sorts to make a world. Is she coming to stay?
So I understood, my lord.
Then you might remove the 2 buckets you put to catch the water under the upper hall skylight. They create a bad impression.
Yes, my lord. I will also place some more drawing pins in the wallpaper. Where would your lordship be thinking of depositing Mrs. Spotsworth?
She'd better have the Queen Elizabeth room. It's the best we've got.
Yes, my lord. I will insert a wire screen in the flue to discourage intrusion by the bats that nest there.
We can't give her a bathroom, I'm afraid.
I fear not, my lord.
Still, if you can make do with a shower, she can stand under the upper hall skylight.
Jeeves pursed his lips. If I might offer the suggestion, my lord, it is not judicious to speak in that strain. Your lordship might forget yourself and let fall some such observation in the hearing of Mrs. Spotsworth.
Jill, standing at the French windows and looking out with burning eyes, had turned and was listening, electrified. The generous wrath which had caused her to allude to her betrothed as a pig in human shape had vanished completely. It could not compete with this stupendous news. As far as Jill was concerned, the war was over. She thoroughly concurred with Jeeves's rebuke. "Yes, you poor fish," she said. "You mustn't even think like that. Oh, Bill, isn't it wonderful? If this comes off, you'll have money enough to buy a farm. I'm sure we do well running a farm. Me as a vet, and you with all your expert farming knowledge." "I what?"
Jeeves coughed. "I think Miss Wyvern is alluding to the fact that you have had such wide experience working for the Agricultural Board, my lord."
Yes! I see what you mean. Of course, yes, the Agricultural Board. Thank you, Jeeves."
"Not at all, my lord." Jill developed her theme.
"If you could sting this Mrs. Spotsworth for something really big, we could start a prize herd. That pays like anything. I wonder how much you could get for the place."
"Not much, I'm afraid. It's seen better days."
"What are you going to ask?"
£3,005, 2 shillings and 6pence.
"What?"
Bill blinked.
Sorry, I was thinking of something else."
"But what put an odd sum like that into your head?"
"I don't know."
"You must know."
"I don't."
"But you must have had some reason."
The sum in question arose in the course of his lordship's work in connection with his Agricultural Board duties this afternoon, miss," said Jeeves smoothly. "Your lordship may recall that I observed at the time that it was a peculiar figure."
"So you did, Jeeves. So you did."
"That was why your lordship said £3,005, 2 shillings and 6pence.
"Yes, that was why I said £3,005, 2 shillings and 6pence.
These momentary mental aberrations are not uncommon, I believe. If I may suggest, my lord, I think it would be advisable to proceed to the yew alley without further delay. Time is of the essence."
"Of course, yes. They're waiting for me, aren't they? Are you coming, Jill?" "I can't, darling. I have patients to attend to. I've got to go all the way over to Stover to see the Mannerings Peak, though I don't suppose there's the slightest thing wrong with it. That dog is the worst hypochondriac." "Well, you're coming to dinner, all right?" "Of course. I'm counting the minutes. My mouth's watering already."
Jill went out through the French windows. Bill mopped his forehead. It had been a near thing.
"You saved me there, Jeeves,"
he said.
"But for your quick thinking, all would have been discovered."
"I am happy to be of service, my lord."
"Another instant, and womanly intuition would have been doing its stuff, with results calculated to stagger humanity." "You eat a lot of fish, don't you, Jeeves?"
"A good deal, my lord."
"So Bertie Wooster has often told me. You sail into sole and sardines like nobody's business, he says, and he attributes your giant intellect to the effects of the phosphorus. 100 times, he says, it has enabled you to snatch him from the soup at the 11th hour. He raves about your great gifts."
"Mr. Wooster has always been gratifyingly appreciative of my humble efforts on his behalf, my lord."
What beats me, and has always beaten me, is why he ever let you go. When you came to me that day and said you were at liberty, you could have bowled me over. The only explanation I could think of was that he was off his rocker, or more off his rocker than he usually is. Or did you have a row with him and hand in your portfolio? Jeeves seemed distressed at the suggestion. Oh, no, my lord. My relations with Mr. Wooster continue uniformly cordial, but circumstances have compelled a temporary separation. Mr. Wooster is attending a school which does not permit its student body to employ a gentleman's personal gentleman. A school? An institution designed to teach the aristocracy to fend for itself, my lord. Mr. Wooster, though his finances are still quite sound, feels that it is prudent to build for the future, in case the social revolution should set in with even greater severity. Mr. Wooster, I can hardly mention this without some display of emotion, is actually learning to darn his own socks. The course he is taking includes boot cleaning, sock darning, bed making, and primary grade cooking. Golly! Well, that's certainly a novel experience for Bertie. Yes, my lord. Mr. Wooster doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. I quote the Bard of Stratford. Would your lordship care for another quick whisky and soda before joining Lady Carmoyle? No, we mustn't waste a moment. As you were saying not long ago, time is of the... what, Jeeves? Essence, my lord. Essence. You sure? Yes, my lord. Well, if you say so, though I always thought an essence was a sort of scent. Right here then, let's go. Very good, my lord.